Hello, YouTube chess fans. This is hbeck. Welcome to a new episode of hbeck Daily Blitz. I'm your host, hbeck, and this is the show where I play a 5-minute blitz game with 2-second increment and give you my thoughts during the game, provide live commentary, and then we'll do some brief review afterwards. Today we're back on lichess.org. After yesterday's frustrating outing on chess.com, I think I was not ready to just go back there again today. Anyway, let's get started. I'm listening to music again. Apparently, it doesn't matter whether I listen to it or not. I think yesterday proved that not listening to music is not exactly gonna prevent me from making bad blunders. So we'll see. Hopefully, I can play a little bit higher quality chess today. If you're wondering, it's February 13th, Monday, 9:40 in the morning. All right, here we go. Here we go. We got white against Mortadeloncio. I think I'm pronouncing that right. 1998. We have a Pirc defense. Knight of 3. All right, let's prevent bishop g4. Try to restrict this bishop, make it hard for him to develop. Let's stop b5. Okay. Bishop b3. Queen f5 is interesting. Let's pin in our knight on c3. Bishop d2, queen b6. Knight d2 is interesting. So what are my options? Knight d2, bishop d3. Bishop on d3 is not particularly well placed. Staring at a wall of pawns. Let's do knight d2. I think this knight can go to either c4 or b3 and harass his queen in the future. All right. This is a little bit weird. I'm not happy that he was able to develop this knight. I guess, what can you do? You can't worry about it too much. Just got to develop yourself. Get castled. Once I castle, then there won't be this pin. I can play like knight c4 and start to ask some questions of black about his queen placement. All right, d5. Interesting. Usual antidote is to play e5. Let's take. After d takes, I'll castle, then I'll be threatening to take this pawn. I got some space due to this e5 pawn. Big question is going to be whether he's ever going to get c5 in. Right now, this bishop and pawn are working well to try to prevent it. Because they are preventing it. I'm not sure if they're preventing it because this pawn is defending the e5 pawn from the bishop, so like it might be overworked. c5, d takes, bishop takes. You know, I don't know. Ooh, interesting. f5, aggressive, very aggressive. E takes, knight takes. Another good option might be bishop g5, e6. Well, he could play queen c7. All right, I'm gonna grab the pawn, I think. I'm gonna grab the pawn. I also have d5. Interesting. I don't think it's anything. It's just a fancy way of trading queens. After knight takes, I might consider bishop takes a6 and putting my knight on c5. I also have this bishop c4 check. It might be useful in the future, but I don't see how it's immediately useful. Maybe I should do it to take away the e6 square from his bishop. E takes, bishop c4 check, king h8, knight takes e4. Looks good. Knight takes e4, there's bishop e6. Yeah, I don't see any reason why to not insert this check. I always have bishop takes a6 in case he attacks my bishop that's unprotected. All right, this looks interesting. Knight g5, he has f4. Knight d6 though. What's his answer here? Queen b4 is interesting, but I have knight f7, check. Guess I have to take. Now I got the bishop pair. Interesting. I'll double the pawns. I'm running out low on time. Worried about f3 a little bit. A little bit. Defending d4, attacking there, stopping c5. Now he's got a couple weak pawns. I should be better now just due to the pawn structure. Not totally convinced that I've been playing the last couple moves accurately, though. I think the ending favors me. Except for I might drop this pawn. That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. He doesn't want it. I'm gonna get flagged. I'm terrible at Blitz, man. Terrible. All right, do I have anything here? Taking his pawns. There we go. Got him. Got him. Got him. All right, just resign now. This is insulting. Yeah, he's gonna let his clock run out. Yeah, that was kind of a sloppy game, honestly, but we were better for most of it. So finally, the deserved result. All right, nice. Let's analyze it. Yeah, so this system, this classical system against the Pircs, I'm getting more and more comfortable with. Just restricting black's options. So like the point kind of is that this bishop isn't going to have a good place to develop, and I'm just going to sit on my space advantage provided by my center pawns and restrict black. So h3 takes away the g4 square. c6, very common. a4 prevents b5. Now, and also just grabs space on the queen side here. So, yeah. Castles, bishop e3. Now, queen a5 is very... I guess it's a normal thing. I think he's playing... This used to be called... I think this is called something like the check defense. Not totally sure. Yeah, I played knight d2 here. I think it's reasonable, but a sensible development move like bishop d3 makes sense. Queen d2 also makes some sense. I was trying to be overprotective of my e4 pawn. That's why I played knight d2, so I could later play f3 if necessary, and also the knight covers e4. Yeah. Actually, now Stockfish likes knight d2 if you give it more time to think. Knight a6. Yeah, the thematic move for black would be to play e5. That's what I would have expected. And kind of my point of my play here is after e5, this d6 square gets weak, and the queen and the knight both can go there. And then later on, I'll try to transfer this bishop to this diagonal. Oh, I mean this diagonal. Yeah. Knight a6. Bishop e2. Yeah, and I feel like d5 is wrong for him because it just gives up too much space. And he's playing a Caro-Kann now down a tempo in a way. This g6 Caro-Kann. Yeah, knight e4 I think loses a pawn. I think knight e4 loses a pawn. Interesting that the computer likes the other knight taken. I guess the point is that the knight on c3, because of the pawn on c6, is actually kind of restricted. Its only option is to go to e4, but the knight on d2 has some nice squares on c4 and b3. So if you want to keep one knight, you'd want to keep this one. Okay. Castled. Yeah, at f5, it's so so desperate. He's trying to open up the position. Because if he keeps it closed, like my space advantage and extra pawn is going to provide me an easy path to victory. So this was probably, in terms of Blitz, probably the right decision, even though the computer hates it, because it's not objectively a good move. It isolates this e-pawn, opens up this diagonal to his king. Yeah. I took. And remember how I thought I was so clever by playing bishop c4 check? Apparently, computer says, don't be clever. Just take the pawn. I'm curious, if I take the pawn and he goes bishop e6. Oh, this is a good move. You just put the knight on c5. Yeah. Now this knight just dominates the position. Black has this weak pawn structure. White has this excellent knight on c5. He still has the only center pawn on the board. This bishop really hasn't found a useful development yet. Right now, this diagonal is just empty, and I'm going to kick it back with b3. It can put itself on d5, but there... I mean, I could play f3, or I could just ignore it, because it's hitting the pawn here, but there's no way for black to really coordinate this bishop with any other piece. Yeah. And I'm up a pawn. On top of all that, I'm up a pawn, so this would just be very, very good. Bishop c4 is not a bad move, though. King h8, knight takes, f5, knight d6, f4. It does kind of allow this idea of f3 because the bishop is no longer here, which was annoying later in the game. Bishop d2, queen c7. Now, I was really not sure that taking is the right option. But I couldn't find a way to keep this knight on d6. I didn't feel like retreating. Yeah. I think this was a slight improvement. Here. What's going on here? I'm actually up a pawn. I'm going to give it back soon, though, unfortunately. Yeah, I could... See, here's my problem. I wanted to play queen f3, but I couldn't find a way to do it without giving up the d4 pawn. I should have just done it right away, though. If you look at the line the computer gives, bishop c3, now this king is wide open and exposed. So, best he can really do is drop it back. And then when I check him, he can block, play rook f6, or he can play king h6, apparently. But I should be happy if he plays king h6. His king's coming out into the open a little bit. Not a whole lot of material left on the board, but I'd be nervous if I were him. Yeah, but here I was afraid that I was up a pawn before, and now I'm not up a pawn, so even though it's very good for white, I couldn't quite evaluate it properly in my mind, especially under such a quick time control that I couldn't really evaluate whether I was keeping an advantage or not. So yeah, but that kind of made me convince myself into going for a worse line, trying to be simple, right? Like in time pressure, I have this tendency to try to go for simplifications, and that's usually not a great tendency because you can make piece exchanges that are objectively not a great idea. Like here, I have the bishop pair. I should keep my bishop. This is an unopposed light square bishop, and I just give it up for nothing. I mean, I give it up to double his pawns. So I get it for something, but it's a bit of a panic reaction. Yeah, and here, I have another tendency. I have another tendency to not consider moves like f3. And what I mean by moves like f3, I mean literally, I tend not to consider moving my pawn to f3 in any position. It's not a good tendency because, well, most positions it's not a good idea. But in a lot of positions like here, it's almost necessary. You almost have to play f3, otherwise black will play f3. And there's no other way to stop black playing f3 that doesn't give up this pawn. That's what I ended up doing. I ended up putting my queen on g4. Queen f3 would have been similar. But no, I needed to play f3, just block this pawn, keep my extra center pawn on the board. Now I'm just up a pawn, and I have this grip on the dark squares, and he has this weak structure. So this would have been very good. Instead, the advantage slips a little bit. I guess he probably should have just taken, apparently. Yeah. I don't know if it matters too much. F3 is just being too fancy. He should just take the pawn. Just take it. Now I'm still hoping that my better pawn structure will allow me to win. And it could have very well have been the case. F3. Actually, I didn't even realize during the game that I can keep my extra pawn here just by protecting it. Because he's not threatening anything. He's not. Yeah, and now I'm just up a pawn, better structure, easily winning. Here, he still can take on d4. It's so important that he grabs this pawn. It's worth more than the doubled f pawn. But instead, he grabbed this pawn, and again, just c3, and I'm up a pawn. He has some counterplay on the f file, maybe play an h5, creating it past h pawn. But a pawn is a pawn, and this would still be winning. Just a technical matter, really. Yeah, so king g2 is another mistake. Now the advantage really is slipping. Rook f4. Now, interesting question. Do I give up this pawn or give up this one? Giving up this one gives him a passed pawn, so that's why I played f3. Looks like the computer is kind of undecided. Now, I still am hoping that my better pawn structure on the queen side is going to count for something. But now this was just a time scramble. I think I only had a couple seconds here for the remainder of the game. And I really just out-blitzed him. Bishop g7. Yeah, I wanted to develop this rook, but I couldn't pick a file. Computer likes the E file. I put it on the D file. E5, that's interesting. E8. What was his losing mistake? Yeah, I cover E2 of rook D2. This would have made more sense. Just rook FE1. Yep. And it's still a very comfortable position for white. Like just by the fact these pawns are so weak. Yeah, here he started to make random moves. Here he should play A5 to take the A4 pawn. Get that off the board. Start to get rid of this weak pawn. Trade this weak pawn for this stronger one. And then his pawn structure is still going to be weaker than mine, but it's not as big a deal anymore. Rook c4, I don't know what he's doing. This was a mistake. I should have just gone immediately to the 7th, and I can block a rook e2 check of rook f2. But I did this. Yeah, he played c5. He still... a5 likes... Oh, there's a tactic here. There is a tactic here. The rook doesn't have any squares. It has only one square. That's why c5 was a mistake. So there's tactics. If I play b3, rook f4, bishop takes c5. And that's very strong. Gives me a passed c-pawn. Problem with b3 right away is that there's... bishop takes c. So if you play this, is there this? Or maybe you first do this, and then when you take, you can take. Yeah. All Alright, so the computer likes rook d8 to try to keep this bishop from being able to attack c3 via some like pins or some sort. Is that the idea? No, it's not the idea. It's just a good toss-in move. You want to toss in like an intermediate move before carrying out your main idea. This just ties his rook down, puts your rook on active on the 8th rank, opposite his king. Yeah, and there's ideas of rook takes, king takes, rook check, rook d7 takes a7, and so forth, like in the game. Yeah, so bishop a3 was maybe not the best move here. Rook takes a4 happened. And now, yeah, just instincts take over. These pawns are weak. If I can just trade off a rook, get my rook on the 7th, it'll be much more active than its counterpart. And hopefully I can just win all these pawns and then promote these pawns. That's my path to victory. And it proved true. It really did. Rook g8. Now, I didn't have to take right away. I didn't need to be in such a hurry. I could have just played bishop takes c5. Very reasonable. There are tricks here, though, still. Bishop c5. If you play rook a2, then this is a mistake. Because of that. That would be nasty. But after rook a2, there's just rook 1 d2. And you keep a rook on the 2nd. Okay, but I went for the simplest thing, and in time pressure, you can't really blame me. Yeah, here the advantage isn't so great. He actually missed a shot. He missed here the same tactic. Bishop takes c3. And is it black that can play for a win? I'm not sure. Not sure. Something like rook c7. He has bishop b4. Yeah. And he's just won a pawn. Yeah, this would have been very dangerous. That is why taking this pawn immediately is very strong. Because now these pawns are solid. They're not going anywhere. And they blunt this bishop. This pawn is weak. This pawn can't stay on the board. And after it goes, this pawn will be weak. Yeah. So I got a little lucky. I think my opponent got a little lucky too, but mainly that was just my poor time management. Alright, but bishop f8 just loses, I believe. Well, maybe not. Makes it tough, though. Now, if he just went straight back to king g8, I'm not sure how I play for a win. I mean, I put my rook on c7, trying to take this pawn. I'm better. Again, these pawns are weak compared to these. You got two isolated pawns here. Yeah, but now he just starts giving me pawns. h7, f4, a7. He doesn't even defend the a6 pawn. Take that. Now this pawn is weak. That one's weak. Yeah. Yeah, we don't need to look at the rest of this. This is pretty much it. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of hbeck Daily Blitz. Until tomorrow, this is hbeck signing off.